Have you ever dreamed of attending an elegant party in an ancient castle? If you're like me, and you're a lifelong lover of Jane Austen, that answer would be yes. And I actually had that opportunity. When I was 19, I went with my grandfather to visit some family that we have in Sweden. My grandfather is the son of 2 Swedish immigrants. My great-grandfather, Olaf, was born on a small farm called Ulas in central Sweden in a town called Järvsö. When he was a young man, his oldest brother, Henrik, inherited the family farm, leaving the younger brothers to learn trades and fend for themselves. Hans and Olaf being my great-grandfather, decided that they would take a chance and emigrate to Canada, where my grandfather was born, and then they went to the United States. My great-grandfather and my grandfather have taken the chance every time they can, about once a decade, to go back and visit their family in Sweden. I had that chance to go with my grandfather in 2000. There happened to be a wedding that summer of one of my cousins. The wedding was held in a grove of trees on some property owned by her parents. Near there was the reception in an ancient Swedish castle called Malsaker Slott. Slott is the word in Swedish for castle. This castle is on an island in the largest lake in Sweden called Lake Mälaren. It sits right on the edge and it has its own dock into the water, and it's a beautiful location. I'd like to tell you more about this castle, but my experience there, the history of this castle, the tragedy that occurred, but then also of its restoration. This castle began in the Middle Ages. It was a simple stone house back then. I have a sketch in my presentation of what it might have possibly looked like. It was added on and changed hands throughout many of the years from that time on. In the 16th century, or 17th century, in the 1600s, it was purchased by the Soup family. That family gave it its grandest remodel of all. It became known as one of the grandest Baroque palaces in Sweden. It maintained that status as a beautiful location for another few hundred years. I have a picture in my presentation of what a typical 17th century family, Swedish family, may have looked like, and their home may have looked like. My family farm is still there, Ulas. It is still owned by my family, and the simple 17th century farmhouse is still there as well, the one that my great-grandfather was born in. It's a sturdy structure, only 3 rooms, and it is small. So about 100 years ago, the family built a larger house that they live in now, but the other one is still there. So if you look at that picture and you compare that with Malsaker Slott, you can see how different it is and how grand the castle might be compared to a simple 17th century farmhouse. In the early 20th century, the castle was owned by the state of Norway. At this time, World War II was underway. Sweden had declared neutrality, but Norway had not. They had about 2,000 soldiers that they were training at Malsaker Slott. They were living in the castle and on the grounds and training. Every night in the cold months, they had fires going in every fireplace. The chimney wasn't meant to handle so much heat. Eventually it cracked. A fire erupted on the roof. It engulfed the roof and it destroyed most of the top floor, including the grand ballroom. It was a very, very sad destruction. But because of the time and the poverty during those World War II times, this happened in 1945, it was left in ruins for many, many decades. Finally, however, in 1990, it was purchased by the Swedish government. They hired apprenticing artists and craftsmen to come in and help reestablish and rebuild this beautiful facility and this beautiful ancient piece of Swedish history. It is now maintained by a group called the Föreningen Malsakers Framtid, and that means the Association for Malsaker's Future. This foundation, this association, now has been through about 20 years, 15 to 20 years of redecorating, refurbishing this beautiful, remodeling this beautiful castle into its former glory. There's a cafe, they give tours, and they hold events at this beautiful location. I wish I could see it now. I loved my opportunity to be there, and I loved seeing it what I could of it. When I was there, we only had access to half of the castle, but we had free roam. We could go look at anything we wanted, go into all the rooms. It was a wonderful, beautiful experience that I will never, ever forget. The other half of the castle was under construction at the time to be remodeled and reconstructed, so we weren't able to go into it. But we could wander around the grounds, we could go down to the lake, and it was wonderful. It was just like a dream come true for me. Despite 50 years of setbacks, the castle is now fully restored. It had its beautiful, rich history from a simple stone cottage to what it is today. In there, it had the tragic event that was another casualty of a terrible war, but it has also a story of a glorious rebirth. Are there any questions?